Well, hello again, and today we have something slightly different, out of our normal orbit, I suppose. This is a Sony Walkman model FX261. It is a radio. It has not only the normal cassette operation, which you expect from Sony Walkman, but it also has a radio built in, thereby tangentially qualifying for this channel. This is from, I think it's in 1999 or at least, or possibly 2000. So it's fairly late, but that's still, 20 odd years ago nowadays, so it's certainly not new. And because I feel the underlying quality of these things and the availability of one at a low price, I thought I'd include it on this channel. There are some problems with this. First of all, there's a few scratches on this shiny front panel here. The battery door is missing. It takes two AA batteries. It doesn't seem that they fall out, but they do dislodge a little bit, so it sometimes turns off. The chances of getting another battery door for that, I suppose, are pretty low unless I found another one, in which case there'd be not much point. So I don't know if I find another one that's more broken than this, but I doubt that I'd find one cheaper. So there may have to be another solution to that, which I haven't thought of yet. But it did come with this little carrying case thing. So once you got the carrying case on, I think that at least the battery isn't going to fall out, but we can see how it looks. Now obviously what I can't show you, I can show you it turns on, and it's got a band selector here, so it's got AM band, but it's also got 3 FM bands, so there are 5 presets here. So effectively you've got 15 FM presets and 5 AM presets, which is enough for anybody, especially nowadays when you're not going to get much AM for much longer. So this one turns the radio on and off, and then if you press this, it sticks it into, you can just see on there, it says tape, and that's, obviously you then listen to it on tape. The only problem is, I don't know if you can hear that, possibly you can't, but I can hear a tape motor going round somewhat noisily, but the capstan motor isn't going round at the same time. So I'm guessing there's a drive belt gone on this, so it doesn't actually work. I can hear audio when I press this, so I'm hopeful it's just a change of a drive belt and the cassette will be usable again as well. What else is there to say about it? Not a lot really. It's very simple design. There's no clever stuff on the cassette. It's just normal transport controls, no auto reverse. It's just got your normal controls on the top of here. It doesn't record. The recording Sony Walk people had a much higher price tag. Nevertheless, that was enough for quite a lot of people. I quite like this here as well. You notice this little raised bit next to the, so if you look at the controls, you've got your play here, you've got your fast forward and stop, and then you've got your rewind, but there's a little sort of what would you call that, a little ramp next to the rewind. I think that's so that when it's in your pocket you can sort of locate which button you're pressing, so if you want to wind forward or backwards you can find which one is backwards by looking for that. I think that's what that's there for. I haven't looked that up anywhere, so I could be wrong, but I can't see otherwise what design purpose it fulfills. So some cosmetic errors. One major thing in that the cassette doesn't go round, but I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting it apart. Fortunately, I do have the service manual for it, which gives us instructions of which order to push out the little tags and hopefully not break them in the process. So what you have to do, and it took me a while to realise this, is you have to push those right in so they actually disengage, rather than, I thought you just push those in and put a little bit of pressure on it, but actually you have to push those right in until they disengage, which is a bit of a scary thing to do because you think you're going to break them. And then at that point, as the diagram shows, you go around the top of it from here, gradually doing each little corner, and then you go around it in a sort of clockwise fashion, gradually lifting out all of these other claws that hold it together. Right, well that didn't quite get me what I wanted. What I actually managed to do there, going carefully round it and very gingerly, was to get this little front polished plate off, this bit of plastic here, which doesn't get me anywhere at getting to the bit. So actually what you have to do is, the real clips which hold it together are further down, so it's just a bit of a snare and a delusion that you can get this bit off fairly easily. and in fact you have to go through and get the deeper ones off by going through and pushing a small screwdriver into this bit here. So we're going to go around that circle again, or semicircle, or three-quarter circle, or whatever. Right, so now I've got this top bit off, which has the button pieces in. Now we can turn our attention to getting this board apart. It then says in the manual to take the cassette lid out, which you should be able to do apparently by going through a couple of holes back here. So I'll have a closer look at that and see how we get on. Right, well, after hunting around for some of my missing screwdrivers, which other family members had helped themselves to as usual, you take that screw out at the top there, which is a very tiny crosshead screw, and then carefully with a couple of tiny screwdrivers maneuver out this ribbon cable that attaches to the front, and I'm hoping now that the thing should lift out. Oh, that's really these little things there. Yeah, so just those little, you can see it's just those little things holding it on at the front here. So that should allow us to lift this assembly out, I think. You just got to be careful. There's wires here, which I assume for the motor, that you've got to make sure you don't break. I think the whole thing should fold over. And yeah, here's our culprit. Look, there's what remains of the belt. It's completely perished. Yeah, that's not a belt anymore. So I think what I'm going to have to do is see if I can find any more remnants of that. You can't quite see, that's too much light on it, I think. Right, sorry, this is on auto exposure, which wasn't helpful, but I'll try and find and remove any more remnants of that belt from here, and I've got to see if I can find another belt that fits it, or order one from somewhere. Okay, so I found a belt in my collection of spares that seem to fit, and it goes round again now, but unfortunately, I mean, I don't need a meter on this wow and flutter tape. You can quite clearly hear that its speed stability is non-existent. Now it's because I just found a belt which I had, and I think it's a little too wide, to be honest, for the pulley. So I sent away for a belt which supposedly is the correct one. That's now arrived. It only took it a day to get here, which is good. So I'm going to pull it apart again, put what is supposed to be the proper belt on, and I'm hoping that that will make it sound better. Right, I've now fitted the correct belt, so let's have another listen to it and see at least audibly if it sounds any better.
3,000 hertz.
So I'm not getting that obvious wow now. It's not absolutely perfect, and I can hear a little bit of it, but you'd hear something, I think, on a set of this age. I'm not too worried about that, but I'm going to measure it anyway. Now there's a screw hole here which feeds through to a little pot where you can adjust the speed of the unit, and unfortunately the battery is in the way, so the only way you can do that live is to take the batteries out and power it from a separate source. So I can do that, and I'll get that speed right as well. Right, now having spent some time dismantling it again, because the wow and flutter was even worse when I put it back together, I've found there's another little catch here, and you see those wires which drive the motor. It's very important when you put it back together that you route those away from here, because the motor has got a disc that runs around the top, and it works all right if you push that down, but then as soon as the case puts pressure on it, these foul the motor and make a lot of noise and actually cause the wow and flutter to be back as bad again. So you have to be very careful to route those wires in the right way so that they don't anywhere touch the motor. So here we are with the wow and flutter measurement. You can see it's not doing badly at all, really. You're getting around 0.15 RMS and around 0.3 peak, which is very good for a set of this age.
The children glance up at a grove of pre-Christian redwoods around us, shafts of sun, mist, deep greens and browns glistening, a sight so lovely you might expect to see a quotation from Thoreau underneath it. They glance up and they slouch back down into their music. It is music that makes me grateful for Mr. Sony and his wonderful invention. All I can hear from the tiny headphones is faint noises like distant chainsaws clearing brush.
Now, when it's used as a radio, it depends very much on the headphones in order to give it an aerial. So we can't easily do that when it's plugged into the mix. So what I've done is I've rigged it up to a couple of speakers here and then put a longer wire on the screen connection to simulate what the headphones would do so we can listen to it.
Mark Morrison, Return of the Mac on Star Radio. It's back in the day. What year are we in? Any idea? Changing Rooms started on TV in this year, and it was also the first episode of The Simpsons on TV in the UK. It was on BBC One. And while Take That were leaving the music scene, the Spice Girls were joining it.
So I've got it all back together and I'm very pleased with it in general. I've cleaned it up a bit, put a bit of heat shrink tubing in here to hold the sort of join of the batteries, which just about fits and doesn't foul the case. Obviously we don't want the batteries to get too hot and we won't be able to get them out again. But I only ever play cool jazz anyway. A couple of other features it's got on here, which you can just about see if I get the light on it properly. This switch does double duty, so if you're in tape mode, it switches between Type 1 and Type 2 tapes, so, you know, ferric and chrome or chrome substitutes like SA. When it's in FM mode, it's mono stereo switch, so if you're getting rather hissy reception in stereo, you can turn it onto mono, which is very useful. It doesn't have Dolby B. That's not a massive problem. I've found anything I've listened to, it sounds okay usually. I mean, it's like I always used to listen in the car with stuff that I'd encoded in Dolby B, and they sounded fine, really. This has also got a conditional volume control. It's also got something called AVLS, which is automatic volume limiting system, and that's like a sort of compressor thing, and it actually works quite well. It does bring the volume of quieter bits up a bit, or seems to, or at least you can push this up and then not deafen yourself on the louder bits. And it is absolutely scary. I mean, you heard it driving those speakers, and that was on very high volume, because obviously the speakers are much harder to drive than a pair of headphones. But the volume that can come out of this through a pair of headphones, now it's not the original ones, I've got a pair of Cos Porta Pros which I tend to use. Certainly the volume that comes out of them is very high indeed. I can see why people were concerned back in the 80s and 90s about how much people were damaging their hearing with these things. Anyway, it's all done. I'll put it back in the case, and I have used it a few times. I might actually, next time I go on a train trip, I might actually use it then and try and simulate the 1990s train experience, which unfortunately is very difficult because the seats are much more comfortable in those days. Okay, see you on the next one.